Hello and welcome to this month's edition of Field Notes. I'm your host, Jeff Weisenberger. This month, our guest is Angela Cotie, a project executive with construction management company Gilbane Building Company and the chair of ACE Mentor Houston. Welcome, Angela.
Hi, thank you.
So I wanted to start off and just maybe get a little bit of your background. So where are you from? Are you from Houston? Did you end up in
No,
Houston by some twist of fate in a good way?
I think it was a good twist of fate. I'm originally from Maryland, and I
Okay.
went to school at Penn State, and I studied architectural engineering at Penn State, and I studied construction. And when I graduated, I got a phone call from a company that said, "Would you like to go to Kentucky, Michigan, Pittsburgh, or Texas?" And Texas sounded interesting. So I said Texas. And believe it or not, this might tell how old I am, but it was before caller ID. And I hung up and I said, "Oh, I didn't ask where in Texas." And
Big place.
so I ended up, I found the number. I called them back. I said, "Can you tell me where in Texas?" And they wanted me to come down to Houston to help build the Astros new stadium. So that
Wow.
a pretty cool job that I got to be a green contractor on, which was exciting.
So you said you went to Penn State. And you studied architectural engineering, the buildings world or architecture or engineering. Was that something that this is what I want to be when I grow up, or how did you end up there?
That's a good question. I always wanted to be an architect. And when I was little, I always would look at things and want to change them around. And my family would laugh at me because I'd see an old building or something and I would turn it into something else and draw it into something. And other girls had they'd be doing the Barbies and drawing that. And I had one that was architecture, like the interior design plates. I don't remember what that was called, but I was doing that stuff. And then I saw architectural engineering. I said, well, that sounds interesting. And then I got there and I'm going, wait a second, this is math and science. This is architecture. And I applied to the architecture school at Penn State. And at the same time, I was taking a construction class. I was waiting to hear back from the architecture school, but I was really enjoying this construction class. And as it went on, I was really enjoying the construction class. I'm going, wow, this is not what I thought of when I thought of construction. I didn't realize that it was math and science and money and logistics and puzzles and all of what goes into actually getting the job done. So I actually had gotten into the architecture school and I passed it up and I stayed in architectural engineering and went into the construction path. And I'm glad I did. It was really, it's been a great challenge for me over the years.
Excellent. On that note, did you have a favorite building when you were younger that sort of inspired you and made you want to get into architecture in the first place?
I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., so I think just the grandeur of the buildings in D.C. and just being around that, the beautiful buildings that were so classic. I think that's why I always just kind of liked just big stones and that it was permanent. I liked that the architecture was something that was permanent.
That's a good way of thinking about it, right?
I realized then that you may only work on one big impressionable building. Only one person is going to be IMPA, right? That there's only those many people. But as a contractor, I can influence multiple buildings and now as my career progresses, I realize that as I get involved early in a project, I can actually assist and help the architect with, if you have that sensitivity towards architecture, you can help with executing the building successfully. I think Gilbane gives me a lot of the stuff that's kind of offbeat, the things that are a little bizarre, I guess, in our world. I have a client, Moody Gardens down in Galveston. We do a lot of, they are a It's an entertainment venue, and also they have pyramids. We did a renovation to their aquarium. So we have big tanks, and it takes a lot of logistics and planning, a lot of renovation work. I did an addition to the Houston Zoo for Gilbane, things that are a little bit rare, things that take patience. We worked with Nickelodeon and did the SpongeBob SquarePants exhibit, which again, depending on the client, takes a special skill set of patience and working through the planning and the logistics, and particularly when you're renovating something and you're trying to make an experience, which a lot of what they've had me do, a lot of hotel renovations as well, is an experience. So I have to sometimes, it just takes a little bit more of a gentle touch. Maybe being a female doesn't always hurt when you can offer that side of what you're doing, patience and ease into a little bit.
Okay, excellent. Well, so, and I want to back up a little bit. So with the Astros project, was that with the ballpark, was that with Gilbane, or was that a different company that brought you to Houston?
I worked with Barton Mallow at the time.
Okay, I gotcha. I'm just curious. So, as your first project, so that's also kind of a more unusual, or at least more of a kind of a one-off sort of thing. You don't build, you don't build ballparks all the time. But what was that like, as a project just on its own right, but also as your first one?
I got spoiled because I got to see how you could change a community. I never realized the power of a building until I saw what that ballpark did to Houston. And now, 20 years later, you come back to Houston and that entire area of Houston is completely different. And had that ballpark not been there, had they not chosen that spot to develop it, had we not built it there, Houston wouldn't be the way that it is right now. And I find that very interesting. And a lot of the projects that I've worked on have been kind of game changers for a community. I worked, after I left Barton Mallow, I worked for a company called Struver Brothers, Eccles and Rouse. They were out of Baltimore, and they did community redevelopment. They did some historic preservation and renovation. So it was very interesting to work for. And I still am very passionate about renovation and how you can, and preservation of what's already there. Why tear up something that's, why are we destroying more land if there's already space? Why are we abandoning things? I just find that ridiculous. And that comes back to the LEED and sustainability and even wellness, right? On how we live. Sure. And when I look at, even in those young years, seeing how changing a block, just renovating a building that was maybe dilapidated and revitalizing it with a community theater that people cross the street before they got to the building. Now they stop and they get a cup of coffee, and then they go inside and they just want to walk in the lobby because they know there's that cool painting. Those kind of things. I've just been spoiled, and I look for that now when I want to be taking part in the next project. I guess I am spoiled. I like working on things that make a difference.
Well, so I'd like to hear a little bit about ACE mentoring. Tell me about the program and how it works.
So ACE mentoring program is a mentoring program for high school students who were interested in architecture, construction, and engineering. It's a free program and it's free for the volunteers. It's free for the students. And when I say volunteers, I mean the mentors to participate. And we, in each affiliate in each city has a different kind of model. But in Houston, we have 8 locations that the students can meet with mentors in their office, and they team up and they work on a project, usually from November until April. And each week when they meet, they learn about architecture, then they learn about different types of engineering, they learn about different construction, they learn about each different emphasis as they go through. And it's very, they focus on different people. We meet usually for 2 hours, depending on the location. And the first half, they get an introduction to one of their mentors or a guest speaker. Say I was come in and talk about construction. I'd introduce myself, maybe give them a little bit about my past, give them an introduction to construction and how my career could apply to the project that they're working on.
Sure.
And then they will work on we give them RFPs at the beginning of the school year so that they work through that through the entire school year, and then they present it at the end of the year. Unfortunately, this year with COVID, we have a challenge that we're going virtual.
Okay, right.
Despite the fact that we don't get to have face-to-face mentoring this year on site, I'm excited because I feel that in Houston, we're going to have an ability to reach more students. And I mean, I think
Sure.
ACE, our mission is to inspire these kids to get involved. And it started in New York City about 26 years ago. And they really wanted to reach some of the more disadvantaged parts of the city and get these kids exposed to these careers. And when I look at Houston and I look at a lot of the students that participate, last year, we had about between 200 and 300 kids signed up. By the end, we had about 225 kids completed the program. Mm-hmm. And about 80% of those kids were were on a free or reduced lunch program. And when I think about some of those kids, and I think about the fact that if we can reach more of those students, if transportation isn't an issue, so our students who live in some of the more far off areas can't just get downtown to come to an ACE mentoring program, or kids that are maybe have a job or do different things can't participate. So I'm kind of excited that we're going to be able to get more exposure for these kids and have, but we have no idea, right? We have no idea how many kids are going to want to participate. We're a little worried because these kids are going to have been online all day at school. Right. Are going to want to be mentored at night again. So should be interesting.
Indeed. Well, and what sounds interesting, what sounds especially beneficial about it is like, so what you were saying earlier about, wanting to be an architect, going to school at Penn State, as you're waiting to find out about architecture, you found out about the construction side of things the hard way, so to speak. And this program seems like it gives everybody, all the kids, sort of a taste of like the various sides of it, even, before you're going to college.
Absolutely. I mean, we want these kids to understand what's going on and understand. You'd be surprised how many kids come in wanting to be an engineer, or in Houston, they all want to be petroleum engineers, right? Because they think that's where all the money is. So I want to be a petroleum engineer. But when we explain to them, what is an acoustical engineer? What is a lighting engineer? What is a structural engineer? What is, and all the different types of engineering within there, what types of architecture is there? There isn't just, not every architect is designing skyscrapers or houses, other types of architecture. And when we start going through that, when they start finding out that, contractors aren't spitting in cups, and they see someone like me, they're kind of like, huh, okay. Or even if they see that there's a career where they can use their hands and it's respectable. And I think that that's one thing that we're really trying to introduce these kids to, is that being part of a trade can be more lucrative than any of the other careers that I just mentioned.
This is true.
I mean, and some of these students are so amazing, so skilled, but going to a trade can be one of the best ways for them to reach their goals, particularly if they don't have the means to get there. Maybe they don't have the grades, maybe they don't have the financial backing. But if they want, if you want to be an electrical engineer, the best electrical engineers I know were electricians. And if they can come out of high school and understand that they can be an electrician. Wow, an electrician's apprentice actually can make some money, and I can be moving, and I don't have to sit at a desk. And the more we talk to these kids about these kind of things, actually, one of the biggest challenges sometimes is the parents. A lot of parents don't want their kids to be in what they would consider a blue collar job. You know, work too hard. My kid is going to college. My kid is going to college. And you know, I find it very ironic now. I have 2 teenage boys, and my husband is an electrician by trade, and he works for a competitor contracting company. He's an executive at another contracting company, and he's always been, our kids are going to college. I don't want my kid to be an electrician. Blah 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 blah. Right. But my younger son, he's 16, and he wants to be a welder, and I think that's awesome, and we both think that's awesome, right? But part of that is how do I guide him to be a welder, but to be the best welder possible? That there's nothing wrong with being a welder at all.
Right. Oh no. Well, and that's the thing. Well, first of all, that's a good point about like the best electrical engineers or maybe electricians first, because these are the ones who will, you know, not when they become, if they go from being an electrician to an electrical engineer, they'll design systems that won't drive electricians nuts, because the electricians know how hard it is to actually put this thing together in the real world. This program kind of gives a holistic view of everything. It's not just about getting people to be architects or engineers. It's also about getting people to get into the trades. But on top of that, you can get into the trades for a while, and then you might want to go on to one of the more executive jobs, and you'll be better at that executive job if you did come up through the trades.
And we try to also teach the students a lot about confidence, a lot of our students, English is a second language.
Okay.
So final competition, they have to stand up and present as a team. So not only do they have to learn about teamwork, but they at one point have to stand up and present a portion of their project. And when you have a group of young students, I think this is my favorite part of the whole thing that we do. But when you see a group of students, and they always get dressed up, and they're wearing, you know, they're all wearing their clothes, and some of them will wear hard hats, or they'll have made little business cards for their team, and they come in and they introduce themselves, and one will be the project manager, one will be the architect, and they all have given themselves different parts. But you'll see one kid that was nervous. And usually the kids on the team don't know each other when they start. They kind of get put together as a team, because there's probably 60 different schools that participate in ACE in Houston. So the students are coming from everywhere. They're homeschooled. Some of them are from different magnet type schools. So most of the students don't know each other, but the encouragement and teamwork, and one will say, it's okay, you got this. And they'll get up there and they'll read their part, and they'll talk about their design. And when we coach them, we're coaching them to say, this is your design. No one knows. We don't know what, if you say, right? But you have to pitch. You have to sell it like it's yours. And the amount of pride and confidence that these kids have. What's really amazing too is we're starting to see, we've been in Houston now, this will be our 12th year in Houston. Okay. And we are starting to see students that are graduated from high school, go through college, coming back as mentors. So we have probably, I think, over a dozen students now that went from mentees to mentors. And one of my favorite stories is I was doing a presentation at an architecture firm, and this young woman comes up to me, beautiful young girl. She comes and she's like, Miss Angela. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm old. She just called me Miss Angela. And she has a brochure in her hand, and she's she has pointed to the picture on the back. She goes, this was my mentor. She goes, how do I get a hold of her? I was a student at ACE. And I said, first of all, you're an architect. You do not need to call me Miss Angela. I said, second of all, you're going to be part of ACE now. Come on. And now she's on our associates board, and one of our, she's a mentor. She's on our associates board. She helps with our student recruitment and a bunch of other things. So to me, the cycle of keeping people engaged, but mostly I like that we can keep the cycle of people coming through ACE, but for the young people to see faces that look like theirs.
Mm-hmm.
When I see a young Hispanic woman who was part of the program, graduate, work for a prominent architecture firm, have an incredible job, and be able to come back and mentor another group of young Hispanic women and help them and show them that they can do this, that's what it's all about. And I think that is so cool. And I'm very, very proud that we're able to do that.
That is great to hear.
So one more cool thing we do for ACE is we have a event every year called Build It Forward. Okay. And we had, it started out as a fundraiser, and then we kind of revamped how we did fundraising. Now it's more of just our event. I don't know how else to say it. And what we do is the kids have an opportunity to build something with their mentors and other volunteers in the city. And we pass on, whether it's a table or a bench or something wooden that they give to another charity.
Okay.
Now, a lot of our students are recipients of charity. So for them to understand that all you really need is your hands and some passion, and you can give back to other people. And that it's been wildly successful, and we keep it really grassroots. The kids come out. It's just a Saturday morning, and it's family. It's all family oriented, and we just grill out. And last year we had about 150 people come out, and we gave picnic tables to 20 different charities in Houston.
Oh, cool. Very nice.